Board of County Commissioners acts as a quasi-judicial body when it hears requests for rezoning and conditional use permits. Applicants must provide competent, substantial evidence establishing facts or expert witness opinion testimony showing that the request meets the zoning code and comprehensive plan criteria. Opponents must also testify as to facts or provide expert testimony whether they like or dislike a request is not competent evidence. The board must then decide whether the evidence demonstrates consistency and compatibility with the comprehensive plan and the existing rules in the zoning ordinance, property adjacent to the property to be rezoned, and the actual development of the surrounding area. The board cannot consider speculation, non-expert opinion testimony, or poll the audience by asking those in favor or opposed to stand up or raise their hands. If a commissioner has had communications regarding a rezoning or conditional use permit request before the board, the commissioner must disclose the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place before the board takes action on the request. Likewise, if a commissioner has made a site visit, inspection, or investigation, the commissioner must disclose that fact before the board takes action on the request. Each applicant is allowed a total of 15 minutes to present their request, unless time is extended by majority vote of the board. The applicant may reserve any portion of the 15 minutes for rebuttal. Other speakers are allowed 5 minutes to speak. Speakers may not pass their time to someone else in order to give that person more time to speak.
Good evening and welcome to the April 5th, 2018 zoning meeting of the Brevard County Commission. We have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. And if you would, please join me for a moment of silence. Commissioner Isnardi.
Please stand and join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We don't have resolutions, awards, and presentations scheduled tonight, and we don't have any meetings to approve either. And we don't have any consent agenda items either. We do? Consent? Appointments or reappointments? I miss those every meeting, don't I? Okay, so we do have some appointments to boards, commissioners. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Barfield. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Isnardi. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. I have no cards for the public comment section. So we're going to move right into public hearings. It's a very small evening we're going to have tonight. Ma'am.
Okay. Item 4A on your agenda is a request for an amendment to a BDP by Powell Geary Services, LLC, in a PIP zoning classification. It's in District 1. I think the applicant is here, and the revision of the BDP is in your package.
Okay, Mr. Powell.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Richard Powell. I live at 4745 Ivans Street in Port St. John, or Cocoa, Florida. Well, first off, I want to thank you for allowing me to come back to the board and address you, to give me time to address the issues that had been raised by the staff, to also address the issues that the residents that are along the east side of the property that I want to develop have raised, and to better define the binding development plan. So what I want to do is to highlight the key items in the existing binding development plan, address the issues from the Planning and Zoning Board where they had disapproved my request in January, highlight the concept plan that I have submitted in your package that shows how I plan to develop the property in concept. Address the property uses along Industrial Drive, which is the majority of where this property lies. Discuss the new BDP provisions and the staff comments. And then I want to highlight what I have done to date. One of the provisions in the current binding development plan prohibits septic tanks. And in discussing with the staff and thinking about it, my understanding of the reason that that's in there is because the property had been misused and they were improperly storing liquids there. Well, if you build a building, there's no sewer there, and so you're going to have a septic system, and that's a tank in my mind. So in the permitting process, a septic system would be addressed, and it would be, approved by the county. One of the other provisions in the current plan was truck parking and storage. Well, truck is a rather nebulous term because I own several trucks, and there's big trucks running along the road. I think the issue there was that they were large trucks, tractor-trailer trucks that were turning on that property, coming close to the residents. And so what I've done in my binding development plan is limited that, better to define what trucks are allowed to park there. I've got an old 92 GMC Dually 3500. It's got 6 wheels on it, and so I need to park that there. So I defined a truck for no parking as anything in excess of 6 wheels. So that would, I think, address the initial concerns that the residents had raised that I had heard. And then it also limits the structures to only an office on that property. And that, I think, well served the previous owner because he owned adjacent properties and needed office space. But if you look at that area, an office building I don't think would be a viable investment. And so I want to expand the things there. But I have defined those. I've made several attempts first to say I'm not going to do this and then say I'm going to do that. And now what I've done is gotten more specific as to what I want to do for my business. In the Planning and Zoning Board, the stated reasons for them disapproving my request was incompatibility, lack of buffering, and incomplete BDP. Well, I have to agree the BDP was not sufficient, so I have addressed that. Lack of buffering. On the concept plan that y'all have in your package, it shows that there's a 25-foot setback along the eastern part of the property, which is what abuts the neighbors. And in the definition of a PIP, you have to have some kind of a barrier, noise barrier there. And so that would be something that would be addressed in the site planning and approval process. That's also something that in the objections that were submitted by the residents that they asked for was some kind of buffering. And so that would be something that we would be addressing anyway. The other issue I want to talk about is the development along Industrial Drive. It is an industrial type street. Across the street is a company that manufactures concrete. Down the street there's a new development, I understand, where they're going to be storing aggregates, where they'll be selling those to residents of the county and surrounding areas. And I also understand that further down the street and probably connecting into the property over on Highway 1 will be a new residential area. Well, one of the things I want to do is I want to put mini self-storage on the property. Well, there's going to be more of a demand for that kind of thing. if that project goes through. One of the things that when I went to the board that I made a mistake on is I didn't take notes. They asked me to go back and talk to the residents a second time. I had gone to every resident, and in your package you'll see a thing titled "Spoke to Richard Powell," where I made note of who I had talked to and who I didn't. I have updated that, although you don't see it. I have talked to every resident there except for 2, and one of them wouldn't talk to me. So I talked to the representative of one. They're Canadians and don't live here full time, and while they were still in Canada, I spoke to their representative on the phone several times. I've had 2 people ask me to purchase their property, and although that's something that I do, in this particular case, it's not something that's in my plan. And there are other things that I want to talk about, but quite frankly, I'm nervous. And so I'm open to your questions.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions right now? I still have one more.
Can I ask one more, mention one more thing? I was not here at the last meeting. I was in the hospital with my foot. But at the meeting before that, Mr. Tobiah had mentioned the shortage of industrial properties and how those things are disappearing. Well, that's what I plan on doing, is helping to develop a piece of industrial property.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Mr. Henry Adams?
Yes.
My name is Henry Adams. I live at 5370 Monroe Avenue, Cocoa, Florida, 32927. I've talked to Mr. Powell on his agenda, and I can't seem to agree with him what he wants to do. He tells me he wants to do this, and then I see in writing where he wants to do that. He has nothing specific. He's building on a property that used to be zoned for housing. It was rezoned for business because the person that owned the property wanted to put a trailer up there so he could have it zoned for business. This trailer never existed. It has stayed empty for the 10 years that I know of. Nothing has ever been built on this spot. There are turtles galore there. It's more like a sanctuary to them. And as far as him and his nothing over 6 wheels, how can he say that? He's going to put storage units there. Trucks are going to come in pulling trailers. They're going to be loading, they're going to be unloading. The street is busy enough with the rock quarry behind us. We have as many as 50 trucks a day run up and down that street. We don't really need any more traffic. We don't need a big building back there for what he wants. It's almost ludicrous. It's just that he got the property reasonable, and it was zoned right. I don't know how it ever got zoned business, because there's never been a business on it. And that's basically all I can tell you. And as far as I've talked to every person that lives on that side of the street, and I could not find one of them that agreed that Mr. Powell should have a big building back there. They see no sense for it. They figured he was just going to have storage sheds. And as far as that goes, I still don't know what he's going to have back there. He says he wants a mechanic shop, he wants leather, he wants ceramics, he wants an automobile shop. Is he going to have a paint shop there? I don't know. I don't want this because it pollutes the air. It's bad for the kids. It's a kids' neighborhood. There's kids all over the place. And that's basically all I can tell you. I'm really not for it, and all of the neighbors I spoke to, they're not for it. The reason they're not here, I'm one of the young ones. I'm 79. The others are older. And they just can't seem to make it. And I know how they feel. At times, I don't want to come to these meetings, but if I don't come to them, things get passed that you don't need to be passed. That's how it got zoned business in the first place. There wasn't enough people to say, we don't need business back there. For the first 10 years I've lived there, there's been no business back there. When I bought the property where I live in now, the realtor said to me, there will never be anything behind you. Quote. And obviously, she lied. But I wish you would listen to me and keep it as it is. Let the turtles run. We don't need any more business back there. I'm sure there's other land Mr. Powell can find. And the people that did not come here today are going to regret it when he starts filling his storage sheds and people rent them for a month and then they move out. There'll be trucks in and out of that complex more than they can imagine.
Thank you, sir.
That's all I get to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Aaron, currently, if we left it alone right now, what could he possibly put on this property? He could bring businesses in right now, correct?
He can only do the office use on the property today with the existing BDP in place.
So he could build on the property?
He could.
So there's going to be some type of building going on it because it's changing. So the only thing he's changing here is the BDP really to...
Yes, and so he has, expressed a limited list of uses in the BDP from the PIP zoning classification list of uses, but it is an expanded list when compared to just office use alone.
Right, and it's actually a little bit better than it could be because it's a little bit less intensive of what it could possibly...
It's definitely less intense than the full list of uses in PIP, for sure.
Yeah.
He significantly reduced the list.
A little history on this. You had come into my office a while ago, and I had mentioned you didn't have enough you didn't have a good, your BDP was too vague, and I told you I probably wasn't going to vote it through at the time, that you were going to have to come back with some idea of what you were going to do, and you've done that. And I think the Planning and Zoning Agency that heard you, they felt the same way. So I think you've kind of taken care of that. There is a potential for anything, for him to build buildings on it now. So changing his BDP isn't really going to change the prospect of buildings showing up on that property soon because it already has that zoning. I like that you're putting the 25-foot setback buffer of a wall behind all of the residents that's going to be behind you. I think that's an important fact. So I think it's a good fit because there is already some industry with the rock quarry by you. So I'm comfortable with this commission, but Commissioner Zanardi?
And I would agree, just looking at the package and looking at the things you've tried to do to not have too much of an impact on the neighborhood and your outreach for as long as you have. I mean, I think you're being a responsible developer. You know, in a perfect world, nobody would develop anywhere if we listened to everybody that says no to every project. But I think that you're doing the right thing with this property, and I think it's the appropriate use. So I'll support it.
Thank you.
Well, I defer to District 1 County Commissioner, and I agree, though. I don't see there's anything way out of the ordinary for this. Mr. Powell does appear to have put a lot of binding items in there, which I think is good. So I'm okay with it.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Powell Services LLC request for amendment to the existing BDP.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item B, you requested that we did a motion to table up here, correct, ma'am?
Yeah, the applicant, WK&R Groves, represented by Chad Giannone, has requested an automatic tabling, but we will need a motion.
Okay. Can I have a motion to table?
I make a motion that we table it to May 3rd.
Have a motion to table to May 3rd. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item C.
Item C is a request to conduct the first public hearing for an ordinance establishing a temporary moratorium prohibiting any and all overnight commercial paid parking lots in the unincorporated areas of Brevard County. The ordinance proposes a temporary moratorium that would sunset upon the sooner of 6 months or the board's enactment of an ordinance regulating overnight parking or the repeal of this ordinance. As you may recall, at our last regular meeting on March 20th, we presented an ordinance for the second reading on commercial parking, and the board chose to table that matter to the April 24th meeting, and as part of the motion, you requested a moratorium, and this is the ordinance that would establish that. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, your pleasure.
Is there a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Just so we're clear, and I believe I read it as it alluded to it anyway, this doesn't include applications that are already in process, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And another question is probably not for you, but maybe partially for you, is do we see this as taking 6 full months?
Well, we are bringing back an ordinance on the 24th, based on the conversation that the board had on the 20th. But what we don't know is if the ordinance that we bring forward, because we're still working on it, is going to be under what was advertised or in alignment with what was advertised for the first ordinance, so we may have to re-advertise. So I can't tell you that today that on the 24th we're going to have something that you can adopt because we don't have all of that sorted out. So coming back on the 24th, we may actually be at a point where we have to have the first reading and then later a second reading. So this kind of puts things on hold until we get that done. But everything that's been submitted to date is able to move forward, and those applications are moving forward.
Okay. And just to the board, I could support this, but I would just encourage us to not drag our feet on it for very long. I'd like to make a decision one way or the other, and whether it's a decision that ultimately I support or don't support, I just don't want us to take any longer than necessary. That's it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, for one thing, we want to push this through as fast as we can because of the potential impacts that are occurring and could occur in the future. So I would say we'll work on this and get it as fast as we can. And with that, I'd like to make a motion that we ordinance establishing a temporary moratorium prohibiting any and all commercial paid parking lots that we pass this.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Tobias in opposition. We are ready to move into board reports. County Manager, Mr. Abate.
Commissioner, the only item I have is that we do have a a workshop without any agenda scheduled for April 19th, so if the board would like to remove that, we will have that canceled.
Do you need a motion, sir? You just go with us saying cancel
Yes.
it? Yes, what?
Yes, we need a motion for the board
Okay.
to cancel the workshop for April 19th.
Have a motion to cancel the workshop?
So moved.
Have a motion, do I have a second? Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, passes 5-1. The motion was made by Commissioner Barfield and seconded by Commissioner Smith. County Attorney, Ms. Bentley.
No report.
Thank you, ma'am. District 5, Commissioner Isnardi.
No report.
District 4, Commissioner Smith.
No report.
District 3, Commissioner Tabaya.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm going to try to be brief here. I just would like to discuss school safety. There's been some information in the paper, and it may have a direct impact on our budgets. As you are aware, the legislature passed a bill dealing with school safety. The sheriff noted that the fiscal impact on this could be as much as $7.8 million. The state has provided $2.4 million in funds, leaving a $5.4 million difference. It is my belief that school security is a core function of the school board, and the county will be dealing with extreme budgeting challenges in the coming years, which do not apply directly to the school board. This year, voters will be deciding on whether or not to grant that additional $25,000 homestead exemption. That will directly impact Brevard County budget. However, that $25,000 homestead exemption does not impact the school board budget. So if we were to pick up this budget, if we were to pick up this budget item of $5.4 million, we would be then forced to raise taxes. The school board is sitting on a little bit more than $17.4 million in reserves. So I've got confidence that the school board will consider all options. They have a couple options that they can decide whether or not to go with the program that the sheriff has offered, or to fund more resource officers. But should the school board not make a decision in an expeditious fashion, I would certainly hope that we come together to have a joint workshop, potentially with the school board, so we can figure out this funding before deadlines are set up. Those deadlines set up by the state are the beginning of next school year to have a school resource officer in every. And I don't want it to be left to the last minute. And the question brought up, well, whose responsibility is it to fund that difference of $5.4 million? So I'd ask that we all pay close attention. We speak with our school board members and certainly hope that they make a decision one way or another. I'm not advocating one way or another, but whatever decision they make, that they also make a decision on how to fund that instead of passing that over to us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Barfield?
No report.
Okay, I just have one comment, like Commissioner Tabaya just did, for us to think about. There's so many rumors flying around right now about the Indian River Lagoon, and my only comment is we got a phone call today with someone heard that we're getting ready to do away with the Citizen Advisory Board of the Indian River Lagoon and overthrow the plan. So I we're not allowed to talk to each other in private, and but I'm pretty confident in the board making good decisions. I hope that everybody would go to them and vet their ideas through them, because that's why we put them in place. And if something's outlandish, we should hear about it. But I just, again, wanted to give my support to that board. They're really good at what they do. I watch them when I get opportunity on the government television, and they have good interaction and good ideas. And Ms. Barker, she's just really equipped to do her job. So I just wanted to throw out that comment, because we have people very concerned out there right now, and I'm not about to overthrow our government opinions right now of what they're doing because we have such a good staff. So on that, I will call this meeting adjourned. Y'all have a wonderful spring week.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.